Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trenergy Awakens Naturally. So I would like to talk to you today about trust. This is an interesting topic to me because humans, we tend to be real all in or all out. We either trust someone or we don't. And something that I've learned over living and getting burned a few million times and some bad understandings of what trust looks like and feels like and all that other stuff. I understand what betrayal feels like. Need to understand the other side of it, though, so let's back engineer. One of the things that I learned in mental health and in somatic healing, being a mind-body coach, is that trust is earned at the level that a person can be trusted. So when I'm working with someone that they don't know me necessarily, they're having trouble kind of going with me on the presentation of whatever the information is I'm giving them, whether it's an educational moment or not. You know, if I'm talking to a friend of mine, for instance, and we're expanding ideas on, hey, have you considered this? Or I'm feeling vulnerable and go, that interaction that we had really felt kind of weird to me. I'm going to put as much faith and as much trust on the other person's shoulders, their lap, etc., as I am willing to cope with the loss if they happen to disappoint me. I'm not going to put everything 100% go into a casino, 100% of everything that I have, and stick it in a machine and hope the odds are ever in my favor. That's what trust is like, is that we oftentimes just walk around with all of our life savings, everything about us, and we hand over full authority for all kinds of rampaging to happen and making decisions about how we move our assets and our resources based on understanding not that just because someone says there's something doesn't mean they get full trust. Just because we're kind people and we're willing to trust. Anne Frank trusted people too, and she assumed the very best right up till the very end, and her book was published posthumously. So I want to keep it relative to the trust that I'm willing to give someone is the performance level that they're demonstrating, not 100%. I want you to be testing boundaries with me too, and that's how we do that, is with boundaries. So for instance, when I'm working with violent crowd, perhaps, convicted felons, they can be a little bit dicey and they can get, turned pretty easily. I personally have been very fortunate that I've never had anybody, completely lose their mind. However, being able to understand that the boundaries here, I'm going to trust you at the level that can be trusted. Situationally, I can see the address. We're located, someplace pretty severely restricted on my entry and my exit here, and yours is absolutely restricted to never leaving, anytime soon. So I'm going to assume, based on just obvious what's around me right here, that the trust level is going to need to be moderated and modulated heavily with how much I'm going to walk into a known situation where trust is already questionable. If I'm walking into a family dinner where I know people like to skewer me, that's not where I'm going to launch my most vulnerable part of me, or my brand new idea for what I'm thinking about doing in my next venture for my loving family, to shoot down that idea right in front of me and just ruin my whole entire day. So I'm going to walk into situations knowing and seeing the obvious. Is this a place where trust has been betrayed before? Is this a situation where I had reason to believe that there's a danger factor involved? Can I trust what's happening here? Just based on the logistics of where am I, what am I doing, all of that, the demographics and all of the information about it, the hard data, what is happening here, and then base it on the individual experiences that I've had either right there with those people or in similar situations where this demographic, this particular type of energy, this pattern of behavior, this type of people, these types of experiences typically shape this way. The cycle of this particular evolution of whatever's happening tends to start, rise, and stop in this manner. In EMS, it was very easy to follow patterns such as that, because you get into a situation and there's a certain height, and then okay, I'm part of we're going to need to bring this down. We've got this under control. We're good. Because it's the fear that takes us to that pinnacle and that crisis point of, oh my gosh, the crescendo comes. And if you don't have a way to really bring that crescendo down back into a manageable, we've navigated the wave, you get a tsunami going, at the end of the piece, and you're slopping over into the next 48 pieces to come because, nobody's ever closing out a measure properly. Nobody's ever able to close the cycles that are coming. And part of that trust process is being able to know that if I create a wave with someone, it's not one so large that I'm going to get tumbled underneath it, or I can't get into a swimming situation where I'm not really rated for that level of swimming. If I can't handle somebody turning things into a personal attack, it's best not to go and, have a vulnerable conversation where someone might personally attack me, knowing, that's like having a cut and you're in the shark tank. That's a known fear and a known point of aggression, hostility, and to place the power differential in the shark's hands, then you're not the shark's fins. You're not going to want to jump into that tank and know that this is vulnerable for me. And so I allow people to introduce themselves to me. I trust no one. I trust everybody to get the respect I give to the basic human being, period. And then respect, after that is earned with how much I'm going to trust you, how much I respect your behavior. I don't respect, ill behavior that is trying to harm other people. I have zero respect for that. However, I have respect for the human that is so damaged and hurt and so misinformed and in the dark that they don't understand that. However, respecting their position doesn't mean I trust them with any part of anything that's valuable to me. Also means that I do not reach into that person's to exact some sort of, weird exchange with them to try to get them to do something better. That is not part of that equation at all, because trust also means for me a much more depthful experience that I trust the universe to be working in balance with me always. And the more that I stay able to ride my wave, the less I care what's happening in the water or on surfboards or any other vessel that's atop the wave, or people that are in the wave, or any of the debris, or any of the storm, or any of the anything. Because whether I'm doing this on my surfboard or I'm sitting, at my table having a cup of coffee looking out over the mountains, it's the same tempo and it's the same ability to go with the flow. And so I'm going to trust the universe to always be bringing me things that are in alignment with me, whether they're great or not. That's up to me to, let me get this back, the balance back and established better, that feels better to me. However, trusting other people to help me right myself, or, is my board straight? It depends. Is the other person oriented to where I want to be? Because when we're mirroring back or asking people to be our mirrors, and we're heavily, misunderstanding the messages and things that we're getting back from people, projections, mirrors, what is it? The behavior that confuses us, that is a period of, I'm not trusting anything that confuses me. If I go to talk to anybody, whether they're in a hostile situation actively or not, and I feel like they're not being honest with me, they're not responding to me, they're not responsive to me, they're holding back information, I can feel the hesitation, I can feel the lack of clarity and that disorganized thought and all of that, that's the first indication that some people say that God is not the author of confusion. I would say that I'm going to expand the vision further and just say a precise system that runs on such precision as the universe. Absolutely. There's no fuzz and there's no lack of clarity. That's me not being able to read the code on the wall because there's somebody standing in my way, or somebody's, trying to tickle my neck and get me distracted with something else. That's a matter of not being able to see clearly. The code is right on the wall of the matrix of what's in front of me. And when I'm no longer able to see, I need to trust me that this is an outside thing out here or an inside thing. However, it's an interference and it's up to me. I need to trust me to cut this interaction and this communication immediately, to no longer cause me to be in the confusion with anybody, to get into the clarity. However, when I start noticing patterns with people, with situations, with different jobs, whatever it is, when I start noticing that lack of clarity happens, or I start feeling, kind of parlayed around like I'm dancing all of a sudden, I'm square dancing, and oh my goodness, with people, or I'm finding delays in communication, I'm finding things that are small annoyances. Small annoyances build up into big annoyances, and then they build up into the awareness one day of, oh my God, how did this happen? And so The trust factor is built one step at a time. What can I trust you with without there being that allowance for, oh, I guess it's okay that you're 2 hours late getting that back to me. Even though we both agreed that that would be in by 10, you got it by 12. I guess that'll do. Absolutely not. That's the first indication that people who are kind of sleazy and like to just kind of do their thing, they don't mind being sleazy on the slow roll because they're ultimately going to get what it is that they want. And so that trust factor can be breached very slow and very kindly. I call my cat, one of them, the tuxedo cat that I have, I call him a quiet bully. He's a gentleman stalker and a quiet bully because he just kind of spooks around. He looks for an opportunity and then he just quietly, insistently just places himself. And I'll find that I am about ready to trip over backwards because he's standing right at my feet and he spooks in when I haven't noticed him. I know he lives here. I know he's in the house and I know we have a relationship. However, he spooks in because he's hungry and he's on a diet. He doesn't want to go on my time. He wants to go on his, but he spooks in and then places himself right there in a danger zone. And so that says to me that when I'm dealing with somebody who does that to me in a human role, my cat is one thing, and even him, you get squished, friend. That's the consequence of being in my blind spot, trying to quiet bully me. And we have a very different relationship, but the rest of the time I can trust him not to be weird like that. However, when it's people, and they're weirding in one direction. Usually if people are weird in one direction and I feel a little bit of disturbance, there's others. Start looking. And that's how trust is built for me, is I'm going to trust my intuition, that I'm not telling myself a story about, oh, well, it's probably okay that it's 12 and that stuff was supposed to be in at 10. It'll be okay. No, it's absolutely not. And if I'm not willing to have that, uncomfortable conversation at the very beginning, the first time, even though I may not know somebody or it's a tentative, vulnerable situation, then wait until it becomes even more crucial. There's more consequential information and resource on the table that's, being vied for here. That's an even more detrimental conversation at that point because both sides have a whole lot more invested. Whereas if I don't just hand over all my trust and assume that everybody's out, looking for the best for everybody else, we're not. I want the best for everybody. However, not everybody else shares that vision with me. And when I'm playing with somebody that they haven't fully introduced themselves to me, I'm already sus. If I don't already know that I feel like you're one of those that plays for the good of all, then I'm already watching. However, no matter who it is, I expect other people to keep themselves, collected at the level of suspicion and, keep this at bay, to trust one another without it being paranoid necessarily, to build better boundaries. Because a lot of us that haven't done that very well, we don't want to build bad boundaries one more time. We don't want to erect fences, made of vibranium necessarily. However, the fact that they're there, if that weirds you out, that's, kind of a you thing. And the person that would come to my vibranium wall and knock on it and say, hey, I understand why this is here. I have one too. I'm just wondering, do you want to talk through this vibranium wall? Would that work for you? That's a very different kind of conversation than somebody who's going to come and, throw hate and throw their misunderstanding, their own darkness, their own unwillingness, and to trust themselves enough that you don't need what it is that you think you need from me. I don't have it to give to thee. There's nothing that I could possibly do for you if you think that that's the case. There's even less I can do if you believe that I hold the answer for you. And so trusting people is based on how much are you expecting me to do in your world and how much am I expecting you to do in mine, and what is the reasonable amount on both sides of that, and what am I willing to do in that, both what am I willing to take from someone else and what am I willing to give. And the relationship between my professional life and my intimate circle is very, very different. And unfortunately, a lot of the times we're trying to parlay the same dalliance over here in professional land. We'll do that over in our family, or we bring our family toxicity and garbage over here into, the business reality. And those just don't mesh. You see this stuff hanging out everywhere. You see the, lack of class, lack of decorum, the actually ratchet, just unbelievable ratchet behavior that's being exposed, because that's the underbelly that always was. That's the underbelly that has always been the presenting part on all of this facade and bullshit. However, it's a little alarming, for people who've given their everything, trusted, all this stuff out here, all of the facade out here. We all have. It's a matter of we didn't all trust it and then not learn from when we got broken by it, that it's time to stop putting the trust out there 100%. that. And it's also time to stop, putting everybody out at 100% locked out, because this is about finding the community of people. It's not about locking out society or locking in society. It's about, we're going to really vector in well with people who really understand what we're about, and that we're going to do community together to build and thrive as communities that reach out with other communities, whether we're related by skin or not, whether we're or blood by not or not, whether related by culture, whether we would consider ourselves, relatives. We are all part of the human family. However, let's be honest, we're walking each other home, and we're not all walking the same direction at the moment. Some of us believe that home is back there towards the dark. A lot more of us at this point believe that the home is towards the light. And so those that want to fight about that, we're not going to get any closer unification and support the law of one, which is what is supporting the system. We're not going to work in alignment with that very well if we continue to scream and rail against the gap that's closing, or the gap that's widening between people that wish to do their life going the opposite direction of where I'm interested in going. Okay, what do I need to do with that other than trust myself that that's a sovereign decision? And though it hurts my heart to see people in pain, it also excites me greatly to look this direction and see people flying and soaring and coming out of situations where, they were deemed a cast off, they were deemed hopeless, they were deemed somebody that had no value, and now I'm seeing them thriving and moving through their life with such ease, just because they're not back there trying to save everybody that doesn't want to be going this direction. The best that we can do for ourselves is trust us, and trust other people have the sovereignty deep within their soul, whether they're disconnected from it or not, or how far away they're connected to it. It's none of my business. I have to respect and honor the sovereignty of every soul, and respect and trust my own space here drives what I do. And I respect and trust that no matter what the behavior out here for another person is, I trust spirit and me enough to know how I'm going to move through, especially if watching someone else is painful, or I know that they're doing things that, yes, it could be different for you. However, you're just not getting it. Why you're not getting it is none of my business. And the most loving, respectful, kind thing I can do is to trust the process and say, bless you and release you and let you do what you need to do, and then turn towards the light, towards the people who are already walking that direction, trying to gather the people out of the dark, wake them up, and all that other stuff is a part of the dark pattern. You have to turn around and stop and get real super stagnant waiting for people who might run us around the maypole a few thousand times, because you're not really ready, but they like the game of chase that's happening on that, crossroads 0 point where creation is not really happening too much. It can if we let go of that baggage. So I highly encourage that, let go of the dead weight and trust your own flow, and trust at the level that can I trust you with this information? If this particular thing went south and you did not in fact do what I asked you to do, or I couldn't trust you in the end and you betray me, is that cost? The cost analysis, skip over the bullshit conversation of, they would never do that. Yeah, okay. Get right to the reality, or you're not really ready to have the conversation for realsy, that someone can betray you. It's okay. Get okay with knowing that it's quite possible somebody would just jerk you around and, knock you down as hard as they possibly could. That is absolutely okay. It's realistic and it's a grown-up thought. We don't have to subscribe to it, believe it, or succumb to the paranoia of it. However, come to what's the worst possible thing that can happen by me revealing this, saying this, doing this, being this, and creating this. What is that? And when I can get okay with that, then that loss, the potential loss, is okay. The potential gain, however, is far greater, and that is why the gamble is worth it. If the loss is greater than what I could potentially gain out of a short-term feel good, I feel better about that. We kind of apologized and we got okay with one another, and I guess it'll be okay if you're 2 hours late, except the next time when it's 3 hours late and then I look like I have no validity. Well, you didn't say anything the last time. And then we start talking about having our, parlaying our professional and our family all in the same kinds of conversations with whatever works best to support the bullshit story that we're telling one another. So anyway, that's a lot of information, and I hope that you're doing well, and I hope you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin, because you're divine. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's totally beautiful. And if you learn to trust that, Truly, when you learn to trust that, you are fine. You are absolutely fine. There's nothing in you that's out of line at that level. It's a matter of how many different layers of cockydoodle and bullshit do I have to get through to interview of how much can I trust you, because my body is designed with the little, instinct, the hairs on the back of the neck, that it's already designed to have that. However, if I'm busy overriding that and going, yeah, I guess it's okay if you disrespect this entire thing and turn this in 2 hours late, I guess it'd be all right. If it's a pattern, man, let your body do what it knows to do and identify, ew, get away from that. That's not for you. Danger, danger. And let that be okay, and trust that that system knows its way. So anyway, as I said, get within your skin and enjoy your divine, because you're divine. It's absolutely fine, and it loves you all day, all the time. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again next time, friends. Mwah! Bye.